Welcome to one of the past HSC exam question videos. What I'll do in this video is cover this exam question, which comes from the 2002 paper, and it's question 23 and it's worth 3 marks. What I'll do in a second is I'll read the actual question. Once I read the question, you have about 5 seconds to pause the video. Once you pause the video, attempt the question, and then press play when you're ready. I'll go over the actual answer itself, including marking guidelines and a sample answer. So the question itself says, in the 12th century China, people seeking protection from smallpox removed scabs from people mildly scarred from the disease. These scabs were then ground and inhaled as powder. Similarly, in the 17th century, as Englishman Mary Montagu injected bits of smallpox scabs into healthy children to protect them from the disease. In the light of our current knowledge about the immune response, explain why these practices were successful. And that's worth 3 marks. So when you're ready, pause the video and attempt the question. Welcome back. Alright, so to get 3 marks, what you obviously had to do is explain why these practices were successful. So to do that, you look at the marking guideline, or I looked at the marking guideline. It says you need to have a description between the source of material that activate the immune response, and then these memory cells that cause the secondary immune response. Sounds fancy, but basically what that means is you said that the actual source of material, the first part, that activated the immune response was the scabs, so the smallpox scabs, because the smallpox scabs had deactivated smallpox virus on it, right? So a weakened or deactivated form. So once we put that into a person, or that person inhaled it, that meant that there were antigens that were still on the protein of these viruses. The protein code of the virus had the antigen, even if the actual virus was deactivated or weakened, right? Which means now we have, in our body, we have these antigens. What that means is it will activate the primary immune response, which is the first immune response, and this primary immune response will fight off the infection even though there was no infection, but it'll basically destroy the virus, but at the same time it will grab those antigens, present it to the rest, and produce memory cells, right? So this is where the memory cells are produced after the infection to make sure the secondary response can happen in the future. And the secondary response is basically where we have all these antigens that are produced whenever a new pathogen comes, sorry, not antigen, but antibodies are produced whenever the pathogen tries to re-enter the body, and they get killed so fast that now no infection happens. So this is immunity. Secondary immune response means immunity. So if you say all this, you will basically get 3 marks out of 3. It's just explaining how vaccines work again. That's more or less what this question is trying to get you to do. So what I wrote is, first, I showed him that the smallpox scab would have a deactivated or weakened smallpox virus within them. So this was the source of that virus, was that smallpox scab. Then by inhaling the powder smallpox, the individuals would have been exposed to surface antigens. So even though it was weakened, it still had the surface antigens on the protein code on the virus, but would face less of a risk of infection from the weakened or / dead virus. Alright, so here we said they would still cause an immune response, or I will be about to say that, but at the same time, the risk of infection, serious infection, is less because the actual virus itself is dead. The antigens still activate the immune response and result in the production of memory cells that will quickly activate the secondary immune response when pathogens that exhibit the same antigens reappear in the body. So here I've said these antigens will still activate the immune response, which produces the memory T cells, and these memory T cells will make sure that the second time the pathogen comes into our body, this time maybe for real, they'll come in, but they'll be quickly destroyed because these secondary immune response is more powerful, and it will produce your antibodies. So what I still wrote is, this is what I wrote in the last statement: the secondary immune response will quickly fight off the pathogen before they can cause disease, thereby giving the individual immunity. Right? So this will definitely get you 3 marks out of 3. But the main important parts you should have had in your answer was that the smallpox scab contained your vaccine, more or less, because that was your weakened or dead viruses, and these weakened and dead viruses still had the actual surface antigens on it, which will then have caused the immune response, and the immune response will have resulted in the production of memory cells at the end, and these memory cells will have activated secondary immune response whenever the pathogen tried to re-enter the body, which meant that person was now immune because that secondary immune response is very powerful. So if you kind of had that in your answer, definitely it will get you 3 marks. And that came from that dot point, which was outline the way in which vaccines prevent infections. If you've done all those questions so far, or most of them, you would have noticed that this actual dot point comes up a lot, so make sure you know exactly how vaccines work, because it's fair chance there might be a question somewhere about this. I hope that was useful.